Hey, welcome to the show, everybody. My name is Mike. This is the Leadership Toolkit. As you know, your definitive leadership growth podcast. I'm really excited because I get so excited about guests that I have on the show because I have opportunities not just for myself to learn, but to bring all of this wisdom and insight to you out there in leadership land. So today I've got an absolutely phenomenal guest. It's no different. I'm really excited because we had a great conversation right beforehand here. Monique Helstrom. She's got over 23 years of expertise in human development and organizational growth. She is a recognized leader in empowering individuals and driving business transformation. She's a speaker, she's a coach. She has worked, I'll have her bring this up as well, worked with Simon Sinek in the past. She is absolutely a phenomenal human being. And most wildly to me, she's like only an hour north of me. I was saying to her, we should have gotten together and had done the show face to face. But here we are because technology is awesome. So, Monique, welcome to the show today. Welcome to the Leadership Toolkit.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. If you would, let's just take a couple or 3 minutes, and if you would expand on a little bit of who you are, what's your background, your leadership and management background. I know you have been an amazing the title, I guess, executive assistant, administrative assistant. What's the official?
There is no one official title. I've been
Okay,
all of them, but my most recent title was Chief of Simon.
chief of Simon. Okay, well that's awesome. You're going to be chief of podcast guesting today. So, but if you would get into explaining a little bit of your background, and I know you have a lot of things that you're excited to talk about, and I'm really excited to have the conversation and how it pertains to leadership and helping people grow.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Sure. My story is one of uh growth, I guess, as we all are. It's growth and development and keeping, getting up when you fall down. I've always been in a logistical job for the majority of my life. I was an event planner for a very long time, and then spent a lot of time as an administrative and executive assistant. And logistics are my thing. And I spent, the last decade working with Simon Sinek and meeting thousands of thought leaders and educators and military and, the general workforce that our world relies on. And our issues were all relatively the same. Like, who am I? What do I bring to the table? And how do I affect the people around me? And communicate. How do I communicate? So I've seen these patterns over and over and over. And it's one that I've become extremely passionate about, helping the world communicate with each other and have these hard conversations like we've never been taught how to do.
And well, and that's one of the things that you and I talked about just on the intro prior to the show starting is the communication. And that's one of the things even in the show's intro we talk about, how to be a better leader, how to be a better manager, how to be a better communicator. And the study of communication to me is fascinating. And I think it's great. And one of the things that you said beforehand was just, well, we don't really get taught to communicate. Let's dive a little deeper on this subject, if you will. First off, how do we define communication? Because I think we say, oh, well, you got to communicate better, and to some people it's like, well, I need to send an extra email.
Yeah.
Right? What is communication? How do we define that?
Well, the definition of communication is the exchange of information, ideas, or stories or news. It's really pretty bland, but what I love about it is the origin of the word communication comes from the word to share. And that's how I
Hmm.
think of communication. So often we want to go tell someone something. We want
Sure.
to go tell them. Instead, what if we all just wanted to share information, share how we're feeling, share news, share stories, share who we are? I think that just opens up a new light on how communication can be seen.
No, I think that's absolutely excellent. So when we're talking about, also one of the things that you stated, you said we don't really get taught to communicate, and that that goes into a little bit deeper realm too. Is then, well, how do we really get taught to share? Because I think by nature humans go, oh, to share, I get to talk about me, and that's not always what it's about. So can you expand on that a little bit, on when we're talking about sharing and communication? One of the things that I've heard, and I have to imagine you've heard this just based on your background and studies, is like the quality of our communication is not what we think we're saying, but it comes in the person that's the recipient. How are they receiving it? So can you expand on a little bit when you're teaching somebody, when you first get in and you say, hey, let's talk about how to communicate better. Where do you start?
Sure. First, I start with self-awareness, and we understand who we are. We have to understand our own tendencies, our own habits, our own personality style, our own strengths and weaknesses. All that affects our communication style. It is absolutely true. We are never taught how to communicate as children. In fact, I could go into hours of how our brains are built and how exciting this stuff is. I love it. But we're really taught how to communicate from those who raised us. Whoever was influential for us in the first 6 years of our lives, it's usually how we were taught to communicate, or at least that's how we find the basis of communication. And then we go into school, and your education is a lot based on how much money your parents have. Your education level has to do with money. So how we're getting taught how to communicate has so much more to do with what we think it does. And there's no classes in school about how do we listen better. How do we become empathetic listeners? How do we share information? How do we have hard conversations? How do you have an argument? How do you have a disagreement? And this is stuff that happens every single day of our lives, and it's something that we're never taught. So I do start with self-awareness, but I think the key for me is the switch from what do I have to say, but rather what do they need to hear? Because I could talk all day long, but if you don't understand what I'm saying, we're not going to go very far. And if you're a leader, if you're a manager, if you're someone who's in charge of humans, your communication is the most essential piece of what you need to get done. Because if the person on the other end doesn't understand you, the job isn't getting done the way that you want it to be. So we have to understand communication has to be done for the other person. Who are they? What do they need to hear? How do they need to hear it? What's going on in their world? What's important to them? What's in their priority list? That's how we have more even conversations.
Okay. So that leads me to two questions. And if you can't tell, I sit here and I take notes the whole time.
Love it.
Because part of my audience, they know better probably what the top of my head looks like. So one of the things that you brought up a few times, you said, well, if somebody doesn't understand what you're saying, do you find that because you've been in these scenarios with high level leaders, they're talking to or talking at somebody depending on the situation, and in most cases, would you agree that humans, if you're telling me something and I may not have a firm grasp, it's uncomfortable for me, the recipient, to say, hey, I don't get it. Isn't it?
Sure. I mean, should it be? No. Is it? For some people, yes.
Yeah. So if you're, as somebody who's delivering the communication, if I'm in a leadership or a management role and I'm having a conversation with, say, a staff member, middle manager, and I'm communicating through with somebody, or I think I'm communicating with somebody, how can I know that is true? Because one of the things you said, we have to be able to share that information that's relevant for them. How do I know? Is there a method or something that you would say? Because I'm saying, oh, hey, Monique, I need you to go do this. And you go, okay. And you may not have all of the details. And I think that you have all the details. How can I know that my communication is getting across properly to you?
Sure. So if I know a lot about you, if we've been in a relationship for a long time, working, professional, personal, whatever it might be, I'd know more about you to understand ways that I can get information across to you, ways of keeping my voice very low and even, if you're that kind of person that really likes to hear that sort of talk. I don't raise my emotions with people who don't really want to hear that sort of thing. So if I know a lot about you, you can really tailor your communication to another person to make sure they hear and understand you. That is the most important part of communication. But if you don't know this person and you're going into a conversation or an information sharing session, say what you need to say. Here's the information that I want to provide you to get this project task or whatever it is done. What questions do you have for me? What did I not explain to you? What are the details you need to know? Every conversation of that, you have to tack on 10 minutes at the end and say, what did I not give you? What did I not tell you? Let me describe the end version of what I see so clearly that you see it too. That's what our leaders need to do. What is the end version? What does it look like, smell like, taste like, feel like? Explain this, describe this to me. Don't tell me the route to take to get there. Tell me where we want to go.
Well, and I think so often leaders, because we communicate from a place of how we would understand it. I think one of the root things that you brought up, hey, you got to have that self-awareness. Okay, well, I know how I would understand it, but the thing you've said several times is what's important for them to hear and understand. And so I think it's valuable, breaking it down and saying, at the end here, you're saying, hey, as a good leader, you have to ask questions. You have to ask. One of the things that where my brain goes with this, because I remember being in a staff meeting in sales, and at one point I'd been an established manager. People knew who I was in this organization, but I went into a new department, and I was explaining, okay, well, here's what our process is going to be. We're going to do this. Here's 6 things that break down, and here's what I need from you. And I remember turning to my then audience of sales staff, and I asked them directly. I said, well, I've told you what I need from you. What do you need from me? And silence. Completely confused that I would even ask that question. And I'm like, just see, I'm serious. This is a real question here. What do you need from me? And then similarly, fast forward a few weeks, I asked them, I said, hey, now that we've implemented this, everybody's getting it. I said, what are we doing here that you think is dumb? Mm-hmm. And they're like, it's a trap, right? They didn't want to answer the question because they think, well, why is he asking this, and so forth. And I think that's one of the pieces when you're saying to, ask questions. As leaders, we have to be prepared to either not get an answer or not get an answer that we're comfortable with, mm-hmm. if we really want to know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Don't ask the question if you don't want to know, because that's actually worse. And most of us, as you know, are trained not to say anything, because you'll have a leader come into a group. Oh yeah. Tell me how you think this company has got, tell me what's going on. And then you get fired, or you do get penalized, or something happens, or the rumor train goes on. And it's, if you are going to ask the question, what can I do better? What do you need? You better be willing to sit down there and listen and take it and do it, or tell them why you won't do it. Sure. I think one of the best questions leaders can ask is, what am I missing?
What am I missing? I like that.
We only have our own perspective. So what am I not seeing? Tell me what I'm not seeing.
I love that question. What are we missing? Like I said, I think I got the question years ago from Dave Anderson. What are we doing that's dumb? Like, mm-hmm. and it'll totally throw people off. I think any genuine, heartfelt, for lack of a better term, question when you're asking people, it often confuses because so often, followers, staff members, people, the boots on the ground, so often they are not asked those questions. They're not asked for that sort of input.
The other thing we have to remember, and just to throw a monkey wrench in that, is only 7% of the information received by other people is from words. Our communication, 7% is information transfer as words, 38% is our tone, and 55% is our nonverbals. So if we're a leader sitting in a room with our team with our arms crossed in our big Hermes business suit, and we're looking down at our phone and we're going, so tell me how I can do better here. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Your nonverbals are screaming everything. If you really want to know this, go into a room with your team. Sit down so that you're at the same level as them and you can look them all in the eye, sit back in your chair and shut up and be open. Open your arms, open your shoulders, open your neck, open your belly. When we're sitting like this, do you think anyone wants to talk to me when I'm all hunched over?
Defensive posture.
Leaders concentrate on words. It's very little to have to do with our words. If your words and your nonverbals don't match, we're believing you're nonverbal, because that's 55% of the information. I mean, if anyone's ever been in a relationship and heard this, I'm fine.
Ooh, it stings even hearing it like that.
We believe the nonverbals. So we have to make sure that our words, our tone, and our nonverbals match. That's
absolutely. No, I want to expand on this some here in just a moment. I love the fact that you brought that up. That is phenomenal, because I think at the core of leadership, the core of communication, that what you just shared is super powerful. However, one thing I realized at the beginning, there's a couple things. If you want to connect with Monique, and I know we're just getting started. We should have booked this for like a 4-hour podcast because we could get into this. This
I
would be
know.
phenomenal.
It's great.
But if you want to connect with Monique, first off, I'm going to flash her LinkedIn on the screen. You can connect with her at linkedin.com/n/Monique Helstrom. It's MoniqueHelstrom. So you can type the URL in there. You can search Monique Helstrom. She comes right up on LinkedIn. Also, make sure that you check out her website. She's got a lot of great information there on what she does, and be able to expand on that as a speaker and a coach and a recruiter and a communication aficionado. That's also MoniqueHelstrom.com. So I always try and put it at the beginning, and I find myself, I'm like, 15, 20 minutes in, and I realize, oh yeah, there's this also.
This girl. Yeah.
So I absolutely love the fact that you brought up the breakdown, psychologically, of communication, verbiage, tonality, physiology. And let's dive a little deeper on that for a little bit. Just expand on it, because that's one of the things. And I've trained in like the sales arena, and salespeople nowadays. Now, and this applies to sales leaders, everything. You brought up the phone of, oh, well, and then I'm going to do this. And it's like, so we say, hey, we give this instruction via text, and we expect this 100% clarity from 7% of what we just said. Because literally, like a text and an email is only the verbs, the verbiage.
Yeah.
So dive a little deeper on that. How can a leader know it from hearing it maybe on this podcast, or be able to research it? Is there something that you have to dive deeper in training? Are there websites that offer this? Let's talk a little bit more about that for just a moment.
Sure. Well, so, email and texting and Slack and all of these different mediums were built for information sharing, not relationship building. You will not build a relationship with someone over email. Doesn't matter how many emojis you use, you cannot build a relationship that way. You need feelings. There's more than that. And so our human brains are magical, wonderful things. And so when our human brains don't get the complete amount of information, such as we would need in a full communication cycle, we fill in that information. So when we're receiving only 7% of the words, we're going to fill in that 38 of tone with what we think, and we're going to fill in what we think of the 55% of nonverbal. So we're looking at, how soon did you reply to me? How many words did you use? Did you put everything in capitals? Did you use punctuation? Did you email me? Did you send me 3 texts and I only sent you 1 text? Like, we're making this up as we go along. So texting, Slack, emailing is not the way to be a leader. Be a leader and have nothing to do with email. It is not in your purview. It is just something that is for information transfer, and that is it. If you need your people to trust you, love you, respect you, follow you, email's not going to do it, and it never will. Give it up.
No, I love that so much. That is the best thing ever.
I'm so sick of my executives telling me my team doesn't understand, and I communicate with them through Slack, and I'm like, this is your fault.
Yeah, well, you don't communicate through Slack. You share information through Slack, like you just said. I think that is such a great way to put it. Yeah. The other thing, and my background is broadcast, right? And one of the things, so people go, oh, well, I'm going to make a phone call because that's way better, or do that. So then you pick up verbiage and you pick up tone. The one thing that I relate that to is radio DJs. Have you ever heard a radio DJ? You listen to them and you're like, man, they are hot. And then you see them and you're like, they are not hot. They had a face for radio. I got told that in the past. And because you have to fill in the physiology, the nonverbals, like you said. So we'll shift a little bit using this piece. I think we can use this as a platform as the discussion, because one of the things you brought up beforehand, and I really want to get into this, is especially when somebody is in an executive role, you're in a high level leadership role. Most people, as you're moving through your business life cycle, will end up with either, the right-hand man or woman, or an executive assistant, an administrative assistant. And one of the things that you shared when we were chatting beforehand is you said, let's talk about the communication between those leaders and they're again, depending on the title, executive assistant, administrative assistant, maybe a middle manager,
Mhm.
depending on the business. Can you expand on that? Where's your head going when I'm bringing that up, first off? And then how can a leader improve that, to be able to communicate better, to be more effective, to get more things done? Because that's what those awesome people are there for.
Yeah, absolutely. So in effect, when there is a successful administrative executive partnership, usually the productivity raises by about 20 to 50%. So just think of if you had a successful relationship with your support staff, you could literally get 50% more done in a day, a week, a month, a year. So just thinking about that in and to itself shows the importance of this relationship. However, when you get down deep into it, I will say very confidently that I think the last thing on most executives' minds is their executive assistant and how to support them and how to communicate better with them. And this is the person that is with you. They have the same exact goal as you. They're on the same track as you. They're just doing different work. You are the only person who are running in the same direction in the entire company, and you're not spending time with them. So this is the most important relationship you could have, and most people aren't using it right. I always say it's like you get a brand new MacBook computer with all the bells and whistles. It's the $3,000 version, and you're using it to play solitaire. Now that's fine. You're going
Wow.
to have a great version of solitaire, but there's so much more functionality in there that you're just not using. And that's what I think is the most important part about executive assistant. When you concentrate on that relationship, things happen, things change, and it will improve your professional life.
So what can you give some specifics? What are two, three, five things that somebody that's in that executive role, that
Mhm.
leadership role, should how should they be? And again, I know that we move from strategy to sort of tactical things in
Mhm.
something like this, but maybe up to five things. What should that leader be, you know, doing? What should they be acting on? How should they be interfacing with that person? Because you say 20 to 50% to me, and I'm in business, and I'm like, okay, how do I get that?
Right.
So could you give us a few specifics?
Sure. So I'll give you two high level and I'll give you two specific. So two high
Okay.
level are understanding the perspective that this person has that is different than yours. You know, as a leader, as a visionary, as the idea maker, as the person in control of the unit of the business, you have a certain perspective in mind. You have a future state, you have a goal, you're trying to get to a certain place. That's fine. Now,
Sure.
so you're flying over the forest. You know, the executive assistant, us administrative folks, we're in the forest. We know where every single tree is. We know where every single road is going. We know where every single porta potty is in that entire place in case you need it. So use their eyeballs. Like it's like if you just put somebody else's glasses on and you could see something totally different in the world. Ask them, here's how I'm thinking about doing it. What am I missing? And that could be for anything. You know, I want to try this new project. I want to do this new thing. I want to have this call on Friday. What do you think? Allow them to give you their opinion from the viewpoint of what they know, which is details, logistical. I don't want to say minutia. I'm not even saying that in a bad way. I think it's the positive. It's all the things, you know, it's every nail in the wall. You look at your house and you're like, that's a cool house. And there's 1,000 screws, more than a
Yeah.
thousand, that are holding that house up. So
Right.
talk to the person that knows where every screw is in your house. Don't talk to the person who's looking at it from the outside. So, you know, things like calendar. Calendar is one thing that we're always given as administrative assistants, but you know, it's not just the calendar. Think about this is your relationship with every person you have in your business and professional life. They are your proxy to every relationship you have in your life. Use that
Sure.
to your advantage. You know, put this call on Friday. Hmm, I'd like to talk to Mary on Friday. Do I have enough space for that? Like, work with this person. They're not your slave. They don't do what you tell them to do. Allow them to tell you your week is all backwards. You're Planning meetings in the middle of the workday. Here's what we're going to do. Mondays and Tuesdays, you're going to do calls. Thursdays and Wednesdays, you're going to do projects. And Fridays, you're going to have your meetings, whatever it might be. It's bigger than the little things. Use their knowledge, use their perspective, use the detail. It's so much more helpful.
I love that. I really like, I took so much out of just that first piece, and you're saying, hey, it's bigger than the little things. Someone you write that down. And if that's not, you need to coin that. We'll credit that to you because it's so powerful. And one of the things that I'm hearing you say is, play to people's strengths. If as a leader, you brought back up way early on, you said you got to have self-awareness.
Mhm.
Well, as a leader, if you're self-aware of what it is that you're good at, then the people around you know the things that they're good at. And you brought up, I think this is an absolutely excellent analogy with, okay, well, the leader's flying over the forest, right? Because you got to be able to see all the things, like you're casting the vision and this is where we're headed and so
What's the
forth.
weather going to be up front? Are we going to get into any trouble? Their
Right.
risk assessment.
And then you said, but we're in the forest, right? And I think so often, and folks, if you're in a leadership or management position, just hear me on this and let it sink in for a minute. So often you're so busy wanting to be in the forest that you can't help project the vision and get all the other things done. If you have an awesome, executive assistant, if you have an awesome relationship like that, that's what I'm hearing you say, Monique, is let that person do the thing that they're excellent at, because then you'll be able to see farther, fly farther, go farther, not just yourself, but your whole company, your whole organization, and then everybody that's with it. Right. And when you were saying, I was thinking like paratroopers, right? You drop you're over and you're dropping the executive assistant down with the backpack on.
Totally. And from that perspective, we tell what parts of the forest are dying. That's the second thing we can be used for is culture keepers. If someone knows what is happening in your organization, trust me, it's your support staff. It's your administrative staff. Everyone knows who hates you. They know who love you. They know what problems are happening. They know who's sad. They know who's getting a divorce. They know who's having trouble with their parents. They know all of this. Lean on them. Ask them, how's my team doing? What can I do? I saw Susie earlier. She doesn't look really happy. Is she okay? No, she's not. She just had this thing in her family. Okay, you know what? But I've already sent her flowers from you, so it's already taken care of. Lean on them.
Man, that is wonderful. So what are a couple specifics? Because that seems like the high level. What are the specific? I'll keep bringing us back to this just because I'm taking awesome notes too, and this is so good. Thank you, Monique.
Sure. So again, I mentioned calendar. A lot of the, we talk about calendar, expense reports, travel, and things like that. So those are sort of your, I don't want to call them basics, but those are the everyday. A lot of the things that I worked on that I think can be worked on is more of this high level strategy. Are things possible? Project management, when you're about to start a new product, a new project, a new anything, get your EA involved in that because they're going to know. You think, oh, we can build that in a week. She's like, You want to know why? Because the guys that are working the machine are off next week. They're on vacation. So, those sorts of things involve someone who is an expert in details if you need to know if something's going to work or not. So I would highly recommend those. The other things that executives don't do often is have your EA can be a proxy or can be in meetings with you. One of the reasons I was able to help Simon so much is because I was with him. I listened and I read what came across my desk and I was in meetings with him and I heard what he was trying to do and I knew his goals. And so I knew how to build because I was listening and I was involved, so get your EA involved. They don't sit in their cubicle. Bring them into the fold.
No, I think it's excellent because then, too, it's that really can become an extension of yourself. And when you're talking about perspective, let me relate this. And there's a couple things I wrote down something else too. I want to try and get back to, but one of the things that's so interesting, because we all have our own worldview, right? So if I'm sitting here and this is what my worldview is, well, if I have that executive assistant with me and he or she is, they're 6 feet off to my right, they're my right-hand person, right? They may see something different just from that 6 foot offset. It's comparable to like the golf ball swing analogy, right? You move your club head 1 degree to end up 50 yards in a different place.
Absolutely.
So you have that executive assistant, that person that's there, they're just off your shoulder 6 feet. They're that 1 degree
Mhm.
where they can help you. Either you're going to end up in a completely different place, or they're going to help you get to the place that you need to be.
Yeah.
I think that's very powerful.
And I
So
had that ability to hear his voice and his inflection and his tone when he was talking. And I could hear if he was unhappy with something, or if he really didn't want to talk to this person. We pick up on those clues so we can understand what others need from them. I oftentimes would leave a meeting with Simon and he'd be like, yeah, they're going to do this. They're enrolled. They're going to buy. I said, no, they're not.
you're like,
Nope. Because the person was sitting back in their chair. Maybe they had their arms crossed. Maybe they were writing notes, but it was about something else. These are the things that I'm looking at. I can
Sure.
tell who's enrolled and who's not. So it's another piece.
No, I think that's, I think it's, I keep saying, oh my gosh, it's so good, right? But that's all I have to say. Like it is. It's if you're gonna write something down, folks, this is the time, right? You sit and I think it applies to so many different areas too. It's not just okay, hey, this is the leader executive assistant relationship, but think about those other people. If you're running a business, even if you're if you're a startup entrepreneur, for example, you may have one person that you lean on that is your executive assistant, or they may have a different title depending on the company. If you're in a larger organization, you may have 3 middle managers that answer to you, or 10 other staff members. I think the thing that becomes hard is then we all of a sudden we're like, well, I got to communicate all this stuff with everybody. And it's like, well, no, you really got to communicate it with the key people, because those people will help hold you accountable to what you need to be accountable to, and who you need to be communicating with, and what you need to move through.
Yeah.
So, let me ask you a question. When you're going through this, because again, I think you have a very unique perspective, and you brought up, hey, when I was there with Simon, at what point did you decide? Because to me, I view, again, checked out the website, we've had a little bit of conversation, and some of the things that you're doing as far as being a coach, being a recruiter, being in a leadership role yourself, do you find that it took some work and time to transition from that executive assistant role to being the focal point? What are the skills that you needed, maybe the top 3 skills that you needed to develop for yourself that were different transitioning from a role, from the role you were in?
Yeah, this is huge. This is my second time around the sun building a business. I had my own business earlier, and I knew this the first time around, but I was stupid enough to do it again. One of the biggest issues that I run into is I'm a doer. I'm a builder, and I love the build. I love working. I love being in the business, which means I despise marketing. I hate strategy. I'm not good at it. This is not where my skills are. So one of the biggest problems that I have is I got these great ideas. I don't know how to market it. I don't know how to get it out into the world. I know what I want to say, but getting it out in social media and blogs, like I'm not even a social media person, so I hate it. So, it's incredibly different. And I also want to make the distinction between, I went from being an executive assistant to an executive. I was a leader when I was an executive assistant.
Sure.
Leadership is not a rank. Leadership has nothing to do with rank. It has nothing to do with the job title. Your office manager can be the biggest leader in your organization, and she could be the lowest paid person there. That's the Ritz-Carlton model. Their front desk staff are one of the highest paid people in their entire hotel, because that's their price,
Sure.
So being an executive, it comes with a lot of different rules and needs and skills that I'm still struggling with. But the leadership piece, I hopefully had taken that with me.
So do you now, in the role that you have moved into for yourself, do you have an executive assistant?
I don't, but I need one. I have other people that help me with certain things and certain bits that I'm not good at, but Everyone says that to me. Do you have an executive assistant? I'm like, no, I am it. I am my own. I like doing it. So
Sure.
no, I don't. But I need help in other ways. I need to hire a strategy. I need to hire a marketing strategist, someone to help me, or a content strategist or something to help me to get that stuff. So I need to hire more. I need to hire the strategic visionaries. I am the doer builder.
What do you view as the difference between, like when you say doer builder, I view that as more of the tactical. That's the things, right? What do you view as the difference from where you're sitting? What's the difference between sort of a strategist and a tactical person? Can you describe the difference between strategy and tactics? Is that something we can
I
get into?
typically relate it to an architect and a builder. So the
Okay.
architect has a vision of a house or whatever it might be. Let's use a house that is not there yet. They can see it. They see it in their minds. They know that it's got white siding, it's got black shutters. There's going to be 2 steps to go up the front. They can see and visualize the thing in the future that is not yet there, a future state. They can figure out how to put that future state together so that it works. The tactical people are the ones inside the house, taping drywall, putting nails in the wall, making sure that the door is aligned, making sure that the floor is level. Both are needed, and neither one can do the other person's job. I don't want to be the architect, and the architect doesn't want to be the builder.
I was just going to ask that. Do you think so? And I think that's a great analogy. When it comes to leadership, do you think leaders can be both, or do you think they need to realize they can't be both and they need to get someone to complement them?
It depends on your job. It depends on how many people are in your organization. If you're running an organization with more than 50 people, you need to be an architect. If you're at the top, you have to be an architect. If there is no one pointing to a future state that is not yet there, you will not build the future state that is not yet there. So
Wonderful.
if you have a big team, yeah, you do need to take that role. If you're a small company, it's all hands on deck.
Sure. So as we're sort of turning the corner here. I want to focus a couple things on you. I have a couple specific questions.
Okay.
One is you are just based on our conversation here, very insightful, very intelligent, great leader, have a lot of awesome influences from other folks. You seem like somebody that, relationally, you get those relationships, and that's how you build and learn and grow. So let me ask you, what else do you allow in your headspace? Where do you seek learning and growth?
Where do I seek learning and growth? That's a very interesting question. So I seek learning and growth to figure out how to get out of my own way often. When you're the detail, when you're the tactical, when you're the builder, you do see things from the pyramid up, and at times that's not helpful in your life. Sometimes you have to have a strategy for where you're going, not just keep your head down. And I think that's something that I've been missing, that I want to learn. Where am I going? Like,
are there some specific people, maybe some specific names, people that you look to, or books, or anyone that you might recommend to the audience that you say, hey, this person had a lot of influence? I mean, I would imagine Simon, but in addition to Simon Sinek, whom else? What might you recommend?
So I read a lot about communication. I read a lot about communication. Susan Scott has a few books about communication. Fierce Conversations, Fierce Leadership. Fierce Conversations is a phenomenal book. It's really all about how to have those hard conversations. Obviously, I'm looking at my bookshelf right now. That's why I have my head on.
No, you're fine.
Obviously, Simon's books, Brene Brown. I mean, who doesn't love Brene Brown? I just want to hug her and squeeze her. But I look at these like Paulo Coelho. I love his books, and it's fictional, but Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, was probably the most influential book that I've ever read in my entire life. So I kind of look for, my leadership is about how to be a good person, not how to lead people. So that's what I more look into.
I think that's fantastic. Actually, that brings me back to one of the conversations we were having beforehand, because you commented also, we don't necessarily get taught how to be kind. And that stuck with me, because I realize since my like in my own life, my daughter was a very small girl. She's a competitive gymnast. That is one thing to this day. She's 12 years old, and probably every single day she's left the house, my wife has looked at her and said, just remember to be kind. And it's like, okay, well, it's the reinforcement, it's the conversation. But that's something also you just now commented. You said, hey, I spend time trying to be a good person. What are some characteristics you look for in, good people, in kindness, in uh, humans that you want to influence you?
Mhm. If I could wave a magic wand, I would want everyone to just think of the word evolution and not have a fixed mindset. If everyone can just wake up every single day and turn the dial 1%, I don't care what that 1% is. We in these days of technology and these movies like Matrix, where things just go into your brain and you just know,
Hmm.
no, this stuff is built through repetition and practice and hard work and reminding. And if you're not open to doing things differently and evolving as a human, that's a very tough way to go through the world, and it's a very tough way to make relationships. It's hard to hug a one-dimensional object.
That's a good statement too. It's hard to hug a one-dimensional object.
Yeah.
So a couple of quick reminders here before we come to the tail end. Again, I encourage you connect with Monique on LinkedIn. Monique Helstrom. It's MoniqueHelstrom. Make sure you check out her website as well. Um, I have another question, and this one kind of comes from the side. I've asked a few folks on my podcast this, and I reserve this question. I'm going to leave actually your website up on the screen, MoniqueHelstrom.com. So make sure you check her out. The One of the things I notice about you in our conversation, you and I part of it, maybe trained because we're here on a podcast and we're face to face, right? But you really carry yourself, in my opinion, with a lot of joy. You've had a smile on your face a lot of the time. You have a lot of energy. You're somebody that the way you portray yourself, at least through video, I go, hey, I would want to hang out with that person. Like that's the way I take you, and I mean that very complimentary. So my question to you is, how does Monique start her day? How do you get to that point where you can be high energy, have a happiness about you, wear a smile, and just how do you start your day? What do you do in the morning? That's something I've started relating to leaders because I realized a lot of times when I was a younger man, it was just roll out of bed, throw on your shoes, go to work, right? That kind of deal. But as I've gotten older for myself, I'm more deliberate, and I love to hear how people are managing their minds and their bodies to get things started.
Okay. So I have always naturally had a lot of energy. So I will say that from the beginning. If you ask my parents, they will confirm that statement with high agreement.
Okay.
So I've always been a little spicy, but excuse me. The first thing I do in the morning is I walk my dog, and we take a walk for an hour to an hour and a half every day, every
Wow.
morning. Every morning. I need that time to get out of my house. I need that time to not sit at my computer. I need to get, this is rain, sun, wind, shine, doesn't matter. I get out of my house. Second most important thing is I don't touch my phone. I don't look at my phone. I don't open my computer until I'm done that walk. Me time. I have to wake up and be Monique Helstrom before I can be speaker, coach, and specialized recruiter. So this obsession with answering emails in the middle of the night, first thing in the morning. Nope. Get up, scratch your dog, get a drink, go for a walk. Do something that's just for you as the human, and get back into your body before you go out into the world and try to help other people do that.
I think that's really good advice, and I think it's powerful, and that's one of the reasons that I enjoy the answer to that question. I've started asking that more, not necessarily of everyone, but it's one of those that I think is powerful because one of the things that you brought up is like, hey, you don't need to answer the emails right away, which is funny. Like from someone whose background is an executive assistant, it's like, I got the emails, I got the calendar, I got the stuff, right? And you're like, no, throw all that stuff to the side because it's still going to be there. Nothing's going to change between now and an hour from now, hour and a half from now. So I think I think definitely in an age of technology and social media and emails and all the things, it's very easy to lose ourselves to that. And so I love the fact that you said, hey, I do something for you first. So
Well, we tend to think of ourselves as multiple, like we have multiple personalities. This is me at home, and this is me, Monique, but then this is me at work, Monique, and they don't tend to affect each other. Balonies. You have one brain, you have one body. If you're not feeling good, you're probably not performing at your best. Period. End of sentence. And if I've talked to 1,000 people before, I can say, what was your worst day that you've ever had, productivity wise? It's usually when they came in with a bad attitude or something happened and they didn't address it before coming in. Oh, I just had this huge fight with my wife this morning, but it's not going to affect me at all. I'm just going to go in and do my day. You're damn straight that's going to affect you. Take care of your human self and be your best version so that you can work. Work is a thing that you do as a human. It's not who you are. It's just something that you do.
I love that statement. So here at the tail end, is there anything that we have not gotten to that you definitely wanted to cover, or any final thoughts to take us out?
I mean, I could talk until the end of time. It's one of the gifts and worst curses I've ever had.
I'm right there.
No, you know, I think if I just want to help people be more human, you know, this work persona, flat, I am an executive, you better deal with how I communicate, and you better get out of my way. Grow up. Grow up. Everyone's a human. We are messy and we're weird and we're smelly and we're just weird humans. Just be a human. Just be a human.
I love the statement, just be human. So Monique, if you would just hang out for a minute, I'll go ahead and take us out. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And I remind everybody again, check out MoniqueHelstrom.com. It's MoniqueHelstrom.com, and check her out, connect on LinkedIn. Just so much wisdom and insight, just a really awesome show. I've enjoyed the conversation with you, and I know a lot of people have gotten a lot of wisdom out of this. So if you would hang out for a moment, I'll take us out.
100%. Thank you.
Yeah. Folks, that's going to bring us to a close for another episode of the Leadership Toolkit. What an amazing conversation. I loved having this with Monique. I really, it was mind blowing to me that she's just an hour north. So I imagine I'll have to have her on the show again. We'll have to connect and maybe do a show in person, because that would be fun, or it'll be like a workshop, if you will. So thank you everybody for tuning in and joining me today. Do me a favor. Throw some thumbs up on this. Make sure that you throw some thumbs up and some likes, because that'll show these platforms that you enjoyed the show. It's a good show. And please, more than anything, if you know somebody that would benefit from the information we shared today, please share it with them. You know, that's one of the ways that we can affect change and we can infect people for the positive, is share the show. It's out there on YouTube, it's out there on Spotify, we're on every platform, Apple, iTunes, you name it. So share this with somebody that would benefit from it. Thank you everybody for joining me today. Until we speak next week, stay great. We'll talk soon, everyone.